Intimacy gets misaligned a lot because when people think about intimacy, they always think about sex. But in my work, in my experience, there's other kinds of intimacy. The first one is what I call intimacy with yourself. That's first base. How you feel about yourself, how you treat yourself, how do you talk to yourself, because that has a lot to do with how you then interrelate in a relationship. The other kind of intimacy that I deal with is emotional intimacy. And then the third one is sexual intimacy. So there's like a trilogy or three sequences that I've developed over 23 years. And usually when a couple first gets together or you're first dating somebody, you're very intimate. You talk, you share, you're close. There's an attraction. It's very intense. Everybody loves that, right? The honeymoon period if you're married. But that seems to wane. It seems to go away. And people a lot of times say, well, what do you expect? That's just the way it is. You know, just kind of write it off. Well, it doesn't have to be like that if you know what you're doing. So intimacy to me is something in a relationship that's created. You lose it, and then you create it again. You lose it, and you create it again. Now, the problem is that when we are given it gratis in the beginning without doing much, we don't have the skills or the knowledge to create it again. And so we just kind of become complacent to that. It doesn't have to be like that. Believe me, I've done it for 19 years. I know that. I'm close, I'm intimate with my wife, then we get pulled apart. Kids, jobs, relatives, there's all this other competing other stuff that pulls you apart. But then I know how to create it again and get back. And then you get pulled apart, and then you create it again. When I see couples in front of me, they don't have the knowledge, the ability, the skills to create it. And they're frustrated, and they're unhappy about that. And they think there's something wrong with them because they can't do it. And I just say, no one ever taught you. How are you supposed to know? Another thing about loving yourself has to do with this concept. You probably heard the psychobabble phrase that you have to love yourself before you can love somebody else. Did you ever hear that? So what does that mean? You know, I love you, Dan. I'm so in love with you. You're such a great guy, you know. It's like, let's go make love. So how does it feel when she does that? Well, I feel she shouldn't do that. No, that's what you think. How do you feel? Well, I feel that's inappropriate. No, that's what you think again. How do you feel? I don't know how I feel. You know. To me, feelings, anger is an emotion, hurt, pleasure, excitement, joy, sadness, guilt, confusion, anxiety, disappointment. I can go on and on. Each one of those words is a human emotion. That's what every couple has potentially in common. Okay? So when I say how'd that make you feel, hurt, sad, then we're talking emotion. Now why that's so important is because when I look at a couple, okay, when a couple sits in front of me, there's like arteries between the two of them. And those arteries, what flows in those arteries, what keeps that relationship alive are all the words I just ran off. Okay? That's emotion, that's passion. Now when a couple first gets together, the arteries, they're like baby's arteries, they're like clean, no cholesterol. So whatever the couple feels, I mean, it's like a rush. You know, you had, I mean, that's intense, that's passion. And everybody loves that. It's almost like they're high, right? But that goes away. Why does that go away? Well, that's what you expect when you get married. It's the same old thing after a while. What happens is those arteries start to get clogged up. And the flow between the couple starts to become a trickle. And after a while, it becomes dead. And that happens. You want to know what the cholesterol is in the arteries is what people call, quote, negative feelings. Anger, hurt, resentment, disappointment, frustration. That's what they shove. And that's what clogs up the arteries. It's not what people call positive emotions. I was taught, don't say anything unless you have something nice to say. That came out of Bambi. If you ever watch Bambi, that's in there. But my grandmother used to say it all the time. Be nice. That's not, if you don't have anything nice, don't say anything, Dan. Let's have a nice meal. You know, what do you mean, be nice? I'm mad. You know, let's be nice. Okay? So what's implicit in that concept, if I can't tell you what makes me angry, what hurts me, what frustrates me, those are all negatives. Do you think I'm going to be able to tell you how warm and loving and caring and attracted I feel? Is whatever your lover or spouse feels emotionally is a fact. It's a given. You don't ever negate the emotion. It's a given. You may not understand it. You may not like it. It's a given. If she's angry, she's angry. It doesn't matter what we think. It's a reality. People don't like conflict because we don't know how to deal with it real well. So they go, oh, whatever you want to do. I don't care. Whatever you want to do is fine. They avoid saying what they want to keep the peace, to avoid the conflict. Let me tell you, that is one of the most destructive things that can happen to a relationship over time. You do that for 10 years, you're going to have a whole lot of resentment. And you're going to hate the relationship. It's going to feel like you're suffocated. Because you're always having to scuttle your position and sell out on who you are at the table. You're always the loser. It's your own hands. Yeah, you don't have a conflict there out on the table, but inside you're in rage. And I've seen people come in and cash in on that after 10, 15 years, and the other person didn't have a clue. You know, they're saying, you mean you didn't want that transfer? No, I didn't want to do that. I thought you did because I want to make you happy. I mean, you didn't want that house? No, I just did to make you happy. And I'm mad about it. You know, it's like, hello, you know, they didn't know what they were dealing with. So don't avoid conflict just to keep the peace. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. So sex to me is it being in the moment. And there's one word that I teach that I don't like. This word I don't like. It's called foreplay. I love what it stands for, but I hate the word because of what it means. Foreplay. What's that? Foreplay. What do you mean there? It's like you do this before something else. What is foreplay? Hugging, kissing, fondling, squeezing, all kinds of tactile stimulation. Is that sex? Or is that foreplay? Get my point? See, people, it's like it sets it up as some kind of preliminary. It diminishes its value. Now, I don't know about for you guys, but when I was younger, we'll say when, you know, we used to make out a lot. It was called making out because didn't want to get her pregnant, didn't do any kind of, a lot of making out with clothes on or partial clothes on. Could do that for 2 hours. I mean, I look forward to doing that all week, Saturday night. Wow. You know, I mean, yeah, I went home with wet pants, a little frustrated, but but talk about an erotic experience. Talk about sensual. Talk about pleasure. I mean, it was incredible. It was a gourmet feast of tactile, pleasurable, sensual kinds of things. But what happens to so many couples that once they're able to, quote, have sex, the amount of time they spend, quote, making out or being in that state, it shrinks proportionally to how long they've been together. You ready yet? Let's do it. You know, it's like it's some kind of preliminary thing to do to have sex. And what happens when that occurs is that the quality, the pleasure, the sensitivity, the intimacy, all that stuff, is right out the window. And that's sad. Now, I have nothing against quickies, don't get me wrong. It's just the steady diet of it. It's like living on McDonald's for, you know, your nutritional, no. Okay? Once in a while, it's okay, but not a steady thing. I mean, so the goal of foreplay is what? When people are having, quote, foreplay, what's their goal? To have sex, which is really what? Intercourse. Okay? I'm not talking about intercourse in the sense that that means that. To me, the only time sex equals intercourse is if we're talking about one thing. And I'm not talking about that. And that's called making babies. That's reproductive sex. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sexual pleasure. Intercourse is not sex. Intercourse is one form of sexual pleasure. It is not sex. So many people say, we didn't make love last night. You mean you didn't have intercourse? So it's like foreplay isn't sex. It's as sex as intercourse. It's just another kind of sexual interaction. So when the couple gets the intercourse, what's the goal of intercourse? Orgasm. You coming yet? Coming too fast? Slow down. Coming. You know, the whole thing is on the next thing. So when they get the intercourse, they're not enjoying intercourse. They're into the next thing. And then, of course, orgasm doesn't last too long, like 0.8 of a second or something. And then it's over. So when people say, so what's the big deal about sex? I waited for how many years to have sex? And so what's the big deal? It's over with poo. Because that's the way they make love. It's like they go for, you know, they're never into it when they're there, is what I want you to see. You get that? It's like they get on a plane and they fly to New York and say, so what's the big deal about the United States? Well, they didn't stop in Chicago. They didn't check out Reno. They didn't see anything. Okay? So To me, sex is not a destination, it's a journey. And how you journey through that whole experience can be different, variety, all kinds of things. There's also this myth that if you get on the train, you got to go to New York. Can't stop in Chicago. You got to do it in a day. And dealing with kids, and they go to bed and say, well, I'm too tired, but I can read a book. See, they understand. They don't want to go to bed and go to work some more. Because, you know, you've been doing that all day. Who wants to work?
He's very informative. The time went by very fast. He was very interesting.
It wasn't what I expected.
Dan Beaver to me was just very inspirational. I mean, just on relationships, period. I mean, I thought I had a pretty good grasp on it, but he gave me a little more spice that I could add to it.
So it was very fresh and very new.
And I related everything he said to aspects of my own relationships and that of my parents and my friends. He said some spectacular things that I would probably take as good advice.
For me, the whole hour and a half seemed like 10 minutes because I wanted to learn more.
I was expecting something dry and maybe even clinical, and he made the whole topic extremely exciting.
I think it just helped me along a little bit more with the way he relates his life to his work.
He told us like everything that he thought we needed to know.
I wasn't expecting his speech to really hit home. You know, I've been in a long-term relationship and kind of thought, you know, well, I've got the hang of this. You know, I know what to do, communication. But he just kind of throws a little more into there that can just, you know, whoa, you know, it can only get better.
He explained why and not just how, and I think that made a real big difference to the whole presentation.
At the beginning, I got really nervous because, I mean, intimacy, how can you possibly learn that from somebody who's just speaking, you know, who don't know you and don't feel for you? But in general, in the whole sense, we are all sort of connected in a way where we all feel the same way.
I'm starting a new relationship right now, and it feels good right now, the way you want the relationship to go on forever. And I think really taking into consideration the things that Dan said, I think there's a good chance that it can.
I am going to refer Dan's information today, really. I'm going to go home and show it to my mom because I can see in her marriage the things that they're doing wrong and what it's leading for them, and that if they try some of these tactics, maybe they can improve their communication and stop building up all this resentment.
He doesn't lecture to you. He tells you, for example, this is how I see it, this is how I did it. He took everything on his personal level where he's not being judgmental. He doesn't approach you as the audience and say, you know, you should not done that. You know, he's not standing on a soapbox.
I want a relationship to me to be the best it can be, and if by just taking a class, improving my knowledge does that, you know, I want it.
I have to say I think his wife is a lucky woman because he seemed like he's really in tune to her needs and into the emotional connection in their relationship. And it sounded like, from what he said, that he's really concerned about the people he helps in his office. And I don't think someone who didn't really believe what they were saying could come up and talk about it so that everyone would be intrigued like they were.
Not only was he lecturing on something he understood, but it was something that he truly believed in. And you can feel when you're listening to him that, that this is real. And this is something that he knows, and this is something that is a part of his life.